Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. The land of Karnataka has its own specialities and features. Especially, it has its own sayings in Kannada language, literature, culture, and religion. In the background of this, if we see southern India has given all religious teachers to India in particular and world in general. And another word is to be said here that South India has four acharyas which played a prominent role in the religious field. Among four acharyas, two of them are belonged to Karnataka. Before that, I would like to say that Renukacharya, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya are belonged to South India. Shankaracharya was belonged to Kerala. Ramanujacharya was belonged to Tamil Nadu, whereas Renukacharya and Madhvacharya were belonged to Karnataka. These different acharyas followed different religious sects which became religions when they touched the heart of the people, when they lived in the heart of the people. Of course, these four religious teachers have preached different philosophical aspects. Shankaracharya preached the philosophy of non-dualism, that is Advaita. Ramanujacharya preached the philosophy of Vishishtadvaita, that is qualified non-dualism. And Renukacharya preached the philosophy of Shakti Vishishtadvaita. It is also called in English as energetic, qualified, non-dualistic concept, non-dualistic philosophy. Whereas Madhvacharya taught the philosophy of dualistic one, that is Dvaita. We are proud of all these acharyas because they are belonged to southern India, and especially we are very proud of two of Karnataka's philosophers, that is Renukacharya and Madhvacharya. Of course, these are the traditions in Karnataka. Renukacharya, devoted to Shaivism, he taught Shaivism in a different way. Shankaracharya was also belonged to Shaivism. But previously his family was belonged to Vaishnavism, but then Shankaracharya became a Shaivite. That is what scholars opined. And Ramanujacharya taught qualified non-dualism in Tamil Nadu, and afterwards it spread to other parts of the country in particular and world in general. This thing can be said of all these philosophical precepts and concepts which become religions afterwards. They have got their own role in developing and advancing the culture which is relevant according to some people even today. But to what extent and how should it be applied and what to be made and how the unanimity among these religions in the interest of the country should be thought of it. Anyhow, one way or another way, these philosophical concepts changed the lifestyle of the followers of those philosophical aspects and concepts. Now, these philosophical concepts and religions, afterwards they become religions, I have already told you. In the beginning they were sects. When those sects stay in the heart of the people, they would become religions. It is applied to one and all religions in the world. And these religions are not an exception to this. And now I would like to say that Madhvacharya propounded the philosophy of dualism. He preached that dualism. It is also said that he was a Shaivite and later on became a Vaishnavite. That is, of four acharyas, two are Shaivites and other two are Vaishnavites. But among Vaishnavites and Shaivites, again, they are categorized into this or that. That would be different matter. Of course, here I would like to say that Madhvacharya propounded the philosophy of dualism and he propagated it. He was a Sanskrit scholar. He did it in the 13th century of Common Era. After Sharana's movement and Vachana literature, there was a kind of apathy developed in the society. A lethargy was there, and from that lethargic attitude, one should come out of it. And at that point, at that time, these acharyas were born and preached the philosophy which was, is, and maybe relevant in one way or another way. but they have not told to fight among themselves or to discard the social aspects or to hurt the heart of the people. In one way or another way, they try to bring together the arts of the people in a manner of its own ways. Some of them were against the system and some of them were for the system. Of course, approaching that system is very important. That is what these preachers, acharyas, did at that time. And Madhvacharya propounded the philosophy of dualism and applied it to society in his own ways. He was mainly a Sanskrit scholar. He studied a lot. He wrote a lot in the language of Sanskrit. Even though he was born and bred in Karnataka, he did not have that much of writing in Kannada. Being a Sanskrit scholar, he wrote many of his works in Sanskrit. That is why we don't get that much of literature in Kannada written by Madhvacharya. Anyhow, at that time, writing in Sanskrit was inevitable. Anyone who propounded and defended a particular sect or a philosophical concept, he should be shown it in another language at that time that another language was Sanskrit. So inevitably at that time one or another, this way or that way, that philosophers or scholars were forced to write their concepts and philosophies in the Sanskrit language. And that is what Madhvacharya also did it. His philosophy of dualism resides in the hearts of the people and he propagated it. He had not written that much of in Kannada. If it was written, those works are not yet found. But anyhow, he had his own followers. And those followers preached the dualism throughout India. And here and there. Now it might be outside India also. Anyhow, he had followers such as Narahari Teertha, and Padmanabha Teertha, and Shree Padaraja, of course, that Akshobhya Teertha. These are the direct disciples of Madhvacharya. After Madhvacharya, that Padmanabhacharya was initiated into his concept, was ordained. After Padmanabhacharya, I think Narahari Teertha was ordinated into the sect. He was consecrated. And Narahari Teertha was the third one in the Peethas, in the Madhva Peethas. Narahari Teertha was a minister in the kingdom of Gajapati Raja in Kalinga. There are so many stories, but they are not that much of authoritative. That is why we get a little bit of information regarding his life. One thing is very clear, that he was belonged to Andhra Pradesh or Orissa region. He was a minister to the eastern Gangas. And his father was Shama Shastri, and his name was, that is, Narahari Teertha's name was Swaminatha Shastri. Narahari Teertha, that is, Narahari Teertha's family was also a Shaivite one. But when he was influenced by Madhvacharya, and when he was initiated into dualistic philosophy, he converted to Vaishnavism. He accepted that dualism. Then his name was changed as Narahari Teertha. Of course, the scholars said it. It is the opinion of scholars regarding Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya and Narahari Teertha. Madhvacharya and Narahari Teertha were Shaivites, turned Vaishnavites afterwards. Shankaracharya was a Shaivite, was a Vaishnavite, turned Shaivite. Even today, when we go to those places, it can be felt. Anyhow, a proper research should be done in this case. The persons interested in that field should take up the challenge and come to conclusion. Then only we can say very authoritatively this or that. That doesn't mean what is there, what is already there is not authoritative. It is an authoritative to a great extent. But in order to establish that authority, we have to take into account other aspects also. Only renowned scholars or budding scholars could be done it. That Narahari Teertha was belonged to the what is that? 13th century. He was born in 1243 of Common Era and passed away in 1333 of Common Era. Of course, it is what is found in the books of garibologists and etc. That Narahari Teertha had two works. One is Gita Bhashya and another one is Bhava Prakashika. These two are commentaries. They are commented in the background of dualism, that is, Dvaita philosophy. But some people said he had written so many works, but they are not yet found, except this two and another 2 or 3 kirtanas in Kannada. He is not that much of well versed in Kannada, and whatever is written is touched the heart of the people, no doubt about it. And being a Sanskrit scholar, he expressed his opinions and wrote it in Sanskrit in his in the background of dualism. Of course, it is said that he was a progenitor of Atao type of Atao form of play, that is Atao form of Nritya, that was very popular, is popular even today in Tulunadu. That Atao is called as Yakshagana Bailata, that is dance drama. Even today it is very popular. Our Jnanapita awardee poet Shivram Karant had boosted that Yakshagana to a great extent. Now that Yakshagana has a different form. So on the one hand, for the propagation of dualism, Narahari Teertha applied that form to the society and exhibited before the people in order to change the heart of them towards dualistic philosophy. It is common, everyone who wants to change the heart and minds of the people use their own ways. It may be a folklore, a scholarly work, or a common writings, or drama, or nritya, or audio visual things, or digital apparatus. And in those days, whatever was found was used at the best. But that use has enriched the Kannada culture and language. It is also said that Narahari Teertha was a pioneer Kirtanakara. So now we have Kirtanas, but in those days Kirtanas were not in this form. And Narahari Teertha started those Kirtanas which could be sung using common people's language. By that, he built a bridge between the common people on the one hand and the scholars on the other hand and the traditionals on the other hand. Oh, by that he tried to bring a union in the society. He tried to get rid of Arishad Vargagalu, that is lust, jealousy, and anger, greediness, etc., etc. Of course, getting rid of these Arishadvaragulu is very important aspect in all the Shaivite and Vaishnavite religions. That is a part and parcel of these religions. And of course, Narahari Teertha was an ascetic. He was called as a dasa. After Sharana tradition, this dasa tradition was developed in Karnataka, and dasa means a servant to God. That is, he was a slave of God but not of man. Here it should be seen in the background of attacks which happened at that time. That is, the cultures different to Indian soil and water and climate, a type of different cultures were come and gone. Some of them are established here. In that background, we have to see other cultures also. Anyhow, here I would like to concentrate on the philosophy of Narahari Teertha propounded by Madhvacharya. Narahari Teertha started those kirtanas. That is why he is called as the pioneer of kirtanas. But some of the scholars opined that Sripada Raja was the pioneer of kirtanas, that is devotional songs. And these devotional songs are played with raga and ta and tambourine. Of course, in the beginning, that dance was not there, but the dance was applied to kirtanas later onwards. Here, dance gives a different meanings. It is a devotional song as per the thala and as per the tamburi, and it should not be taken in the concept we are taking in the modern days. That the dance form and song form is completely different. It is devotional. It doesn't provoke your emotions and etc. etc. When you listen to them, of course, you have a peace of mind. Whether it is vachanas or kirtanas or puranas or any other things, they try to create a kind of calmness, a kind of completeness, or a kind of pleasantness which we don't get in the society. They generally take us towards the spirituality. That is the main characteristics of these forms. And these religious teachers use these forms in their own ways at their best. And Narahari Teertha was one of them. So, especially in Kannada, we have two kirtanas. I don't have them in full form. I would like to quote them only one or two lines. Of course, they are: I delude, oh I have delude. Hari, it is proper. Of course, in Kannada, they are beautifully sung. That Murulade, Nanentu Murulade. When we translate it into another language, whether it is English or any language for that matter, we can't get the originality we have in the original language. That is the problem of this translation. Whether it is a lyrical translation, melodious translation, or translation by word after word, etc., etc., it has its own limitations, but at the same time, the translation should not be neglected, because translator becomes more than an author sometimes. Author is popular in that language only, but the translator is very popular not only in that language, in another language also, and more than that, he spreads that knowledge to other parts of the world. That is very important. It doesn't hide everything. he brings out the necessary things and tries to convert and tries to touch the hearts of the people in the world itself. That shows the importance of the translator. So anyhow, translator and author should go hand in hand, and in the name of translation, the intention of the author should not be spoiled. That is, at least that a translation should try to project what the author has said in his work, in his or her work. Anyhow, that is what nowadays we try to have it. So Narahari Teertha contributed a lot regarding the propagation of dualism, that is Dvaita philosophy. And there are different concepts, and I don't want to go into those concepts. But anyhow, regarding Kirtanas, regarding the propagation of dualism in Orissa, Andhra Pradesh and other places in India, the credit should go to persons like Narahari Teertha and others. Of course, now the philosophy of dualism has its own branches. It is told that there are 25 mathas in India which are trying to propagate the Madhva concept. That is another matter. Anyhow, whatever good things are propagated should be accepted. Whatever religion it may be, whatever thing it may be, whatever other things it may be. These dasas are the servants of the God. They are the slaves of the God, not slaves to men. That is very important. Because at that time, there was a system which tried to make human beings slaves to men and women. But here, a man should not become a slave to man. He should become a friend of man. He should help that man or another one. But when we think of slave, when we use of slave, automatically it deprives us of our liberty, fraternity, and equality. So those dasas fight against that slavism of men to men. Slavic nature of society to another society. Slavic culture of one to another culture. It is bad. It is not that much of good. It is not helpful for the development of the society also. So, Sharanas and Dasas went beyond this and they established their own understanding. So, first they knew themselves. They stood for work and worship. They stood for meditation and the calmness of mind. Meditate and have the peace. And that meditation should not be dependent in the sense they should earn their own livelihood. And for their life, they should not exploit others. They should not squeeze the others. That is what we have seen in the Sharana Chalavali and Dasa concept. And Narahari Teertha became a leader after Madhvacharya and Padmanabhacharya. Padmanabha Teertha, Madhvacharya. Of course, sometimes they have different concept in the different background, but giving the meanings with difference. Anyhow, Madhvacharya had the Madhvacharya was Vasudeva, then he becomes Purna Prajna, then he becomes what is that? Anantirtha, and then Madhvacharya. These are different stages in their development. That is what with these titles he is identified by his followers. That is a different matter. It happens in every religion. It happens in every preachers. Of course, that Guru Shishya Parampare was followed. Whatever Guru said, Shishya followed it. So that Guru Madhvacharya sent Narahari Teertha to Kalinga to bring the original statue of Rama and Sita. So Narahari Teertha went to Kalinga and he brought original statue of Rama and Sita and gave it to his Guru. Guru became very happy. Of course, there is a story behind that. I don't want to go to that story because it takes a lot of time. In a short span of time, I try to introduce the main intention and things of Narahari Teertha and which they are evolved and which in turn affect the culture of the people and which make the people ennobled one in its own way. Of course, that is what we have to, that is what it is focused in this lecture. Anyhow, if we try to understand dualism and Narahari Teertha in this way, definitely we can come to a conclusion which is very helpful for the development of society in general. Whatever isms, whatever sects, whatever religions are there in the world, they are for the sake of humans' development and advancement, not for the suppression and oppression, not for the exploitation. That is what we have to keep in our mind while studying and researching these religions and the cultures they bred and brought. So when we look in this background, automatically we can have a peaceful society, we can have a beautiful society, and we can enable and ennoble the society. This is what I have understood from a little bit study of dualism, Madhvacharya, and today's Narahari Teertha. Today's topic, Narahari Teertha. So, Narahari Teertha became a progenitor of auto form of singing and Kirtana, and of course some of his Kirtanas, because these Kirtanas played a prominent role later onwards. Yes, Dasa culture goes on and continues. Different dasas added one thing or another thing to these Kirtanas. Especially when we talk of Kirtanas, when we think of Kirtanas, automatically very popular dasas such as Purandara Dasa and Kanaka Dasa have come to our mind. Anyhow, whenever we get the time, we can have them also, we can think of them also. It can be revealed in other episodes and etc. etc. So, I have told you whatever I get in the literary books and histories and other things, especially the literary books of Shree Mughali and Tasu Shamaraya, who told about these things in their Kannada Sahitya Charitri. And of course, other histories are there. Of course, the history of rice is also there. A brief history of Kannada literature, that is also there. So, to a little extent, he has also touched these acharyas, these dasas. So, when we go through these works, definitely we can have a very healthy approach of these acharyas in whatever religion they may be, which who helped for the growth, for the health of the society. So, with this, I would like to say to have a happy society and peaceful society. Subscribe and share it, and see you in the next episode. Namaskar. Thank you.